ahead. Anyway, I'm also recording this tonight because after I said I'd come here, I started taking a class. I'm working on a PhD in history. And the class I'm taking said, you have to do a public presentation. I'm like, well, I got that one in the bag already. I already had that planned. So I'm just going to go ahead and record this as well for that. I'll be happy to share it with the camp as well, so y'all can do whatever you want to with it. Anyway, my name is Ernest Blevins. I am the commander for West Virginia Division. So I enjoy coming around a little bit and traveling when I work out of state to other SCV camps. So we're doing some things up there. And this presentation is, I call it Forever in Mourning, which is based on an article I did a few years ago, which is available on academia.edu. If you search for my name, Forever in Mourning, it'll pop up in a couple places. It's free. So y'all are welcome to take a look at that. First, history of what I call the monument movement. The monument movement is something I started playing around with, and it sort of began even before the war was over. It started. This marker here is Confederate Memorial Day. This is where they first held it in Georgia. In fact, it's still under Union occupation. They put flowers and stuff on both graves, called it Decoration Day. The first Confederate monument was actually, I discovered, at the Battle of Manassas. And it was for a general who was killed, Francis Stevens Bartow of Georgia. If y'all went to the convention and the reunion in Georgia, Cartersville is in Bartow County, named for him. But it was destroyed sometime between either when it was put up, but it was gone by the time the battle happened. So it might have been destroyed during the second battle. There is a picture, I don't have it up here, but there is a picture of the base that's still there, like flush with the earth level. So it did exist at one point. The Hazen Monument, which is this monument here, is the Battle of Murfreesboro, and was completed after the campaign there in December 1862 into 1863, and it was completed sometime then. And since then, the Union Cemetery that's around it was built up, and it's under National Park Service protection. The first post-war monuments were erected in my home state of South Carolina, in Shreveport, and also in Romney, West Virginia, which, for those of you, this is West Virginia, Eastern Panhandle, Northern Panhandle, it's over here is where it is. Which is sort of interesting, the fact that, West Virginia is a very split state, and, one of the first Confederate monuments is placed in West Virginia. So, Memorial and Veterans Group, who put up these monuments? Well, you have various monument associations, the Ladies Association, I'm making some of these up, Shreveport Ladies Association, Shreveport Monument Association, etc., etc. And you also had later on, for the Confederate side, the United Confederate Veterans, which really didn't do so many monuments because usually the UDC took care of them because, they're not really putting monuments to themselves, but they did assist when asked to help out putting a monument. So as membership, they put in monument money and things like that. The Sons of Confederate Veterans started putting up monuments. Also, on the Union side, you had the Grand Army of the Republic, the Allied Orders, Women's Relief Corps. These groups put up monuments as well. Also, the Union, they put up a lot of buildings too, libraries and local halls, VAR halls, that sort of thing. So you got this whole movement going on with monuments and remembering the war. This next slide is based on my research of the monuments. The first one here is my first 2019 research. It appears in the article. And I basically took the SPLC list. We all familiar with that hit list. And charted them out. I also went and surveyed online using the same methodology they did, and I got 422 Union monuments. Those were equal enough to compare with. So you see some of the battlefield graph to see how the Union monument went up, how Confederate monuments went up, when the headlines of the various organizations were made. And if you note, also have the difference between the war, 10th and 50th anniversaries, all those anniversaries, which a lot of monuments seem to go with. Like a community had something big at Vicksburg or Gettysburg, they tend to put a monument up in 63, whatever is a 15, 10, whatever anniversary for that. And same thing with other battles through the war. The second one is a little bit different because I had actually learned Excel a little bit better. And it's based on new monument information. And you can see the Union monuments actually had a lot more going on early on. And they were pretty much, even before the war started, putting a few up. So you can see this is actually not just a Confederate monument building, but Union was doing the same thing. So they're all doing these monuments together to honor their community losses. Oops. Go back there. So I'm not going to discuss every sort of monument sort of situation because there's so many, but I'm going to focus on some of the built ones, such as statues and obelisks and those sort of things. So we have courthouse monuments, ones that were placed in front of courthouses. Again, north and south, we're both putting these up. And some of them I don't even remember where I took the pictures of. I've taken so many. I've visited about 200 Confederate monuments so far, personally, including 20 in Texas during this trip here. So these are some Confederate monuments. I know that one is on my right there is in Georgia. They also put monuments up in city centers, memorials, boulevards, Union Square, plazas. I can't remember where this one is. That one's in Gaffney, South Carolina. It's in a median there. And Gaffney wasn't even existing during the war. The county wasn't cut till after the war was done with. It's Cherokee County.
Is that where the peach is?
Yes, the big peach is there. Yep, that's Gaffney. And I'm not sure how those got sideways, but this is a column monument, and there's actually cannonballs on top there. I don't know why they turned sideways when I put them in somehow. Other types of monuments, we have the column monuments. I don't know why those turned sideways either. These are the ones you're more familiar with, Confederate on top or Union soldier on top. So you also have the obelisk. Interesting, they show in the preview that they're upright. These are obelisks from various places, again, showing Confederate monuments in different forms. An obelisk is an older form. It's has some representation for life and spiritual. It started with Egypt having obelisks, and so it does have a lot of symbology in mourning with it. There's a right one. This is an obelisk here, and you can see I put in a bigger one there of the top of it with the drape on top of it. That is a symbol of mourning. This one happens to be the one in Decatur, Georgia, DeKalb County. They've removed it and replaced it. I heard either going to or did with Representative Lewis, John Lewis. The other one there, 1867, with an urn on top. An urn is like a vessel in Greek mythology, a symbol of transporting you through life and through afterlife. And again, it also has the drape on it. So it's also a symbol of mourning too. That one is the Romney, West Virginia monument. It's in a cemetery there. Next one. Upright monuments. Why is that sideways? Anyway, the top one there, Dalton, Georgia. It's the only monument of General Johnston. It's been moved, unfortunately. It was downtown. The other one here is a monument to the Kanawha County Rifles, where I live. In fact, General Patton's grandfather or father was involved in there, and it was actually listed on the plaque there, which the city stole a few years back. They were upset, or a few people, like 3 or 4 people, complained enough to our newly elected mayor, who is very leaning, and convinced her to remove the plaque. So they removed it. The main reason, besides it being Confederate, is it mentions a black cook was with the regiment. So talking about removing history, I didn't know that. In fact, I knew this. This is one of those things I do when I go places. I go read the stuff on monuments, boards, interpretation signs, all sorts of stuff you can find out that way, and you'll see a little bit more later of why that's important. But the monument itself is actually still standing. I have a big problem when they say, we've removed the monument. I look at it, it's like, the monument's still there, you just removed the statue. So some of the ideas of them removing the monuments is actually just removing the statue. In fact, on my way out here a few weeks ago, I stopped by, I did a route through Alabama that I hadn't done before, and I was in Tuskegee. And they've covered the guy up with a garbage bag on his head. And I was tinkering around the monument, and the police came. And they were nice, they were professional, they like asked why I was doing and stuff, and they listened to my stories and stuff about my interpretation of monuments and things, and they're quite professional. They said, you can't take the bag off the head though. Okay, I won't take the bag off the head. But I did ask, why they're there. He's like, because we've heard he's looking at a plantation. Okay, granted, there could be a plantation north of the town. I don't know. But a lot of these Confederate monuments face north or in northern direction. And that's to keep an eye on the Federals coming back down. There's a monument in Georgia that sort of started me on this whole thing in 2010 when it was a 100th anniversary. And I lived in Carroll County, Georgia, which is in West Georgia, about 25 miles from the Alabama border. And we did the monument there, and we discovered some newspaper articles about how when they originally, he was in a square in the middle of town, and he had to be moved. Reason? Because they're going to put a road through the square, so you don't have to go around the square anymore, you go through it. So they moved him to the hospital, which was down Dixie Street. There's a whole story behind that in itself. So when they moved him down, they stopped to turn on Dixie Street, and they moved him to turn north. And they went on down Dixie Street, put him back up on the monument. In 1976, they extended the Depression-era courthouse, added on a whole new wing. It's like, we need to move our friend back up here about a half a block from where he originally started. So they took him down from the hospital, which my kids were actually born in too. Hauled him down Dixie Street, looking north, turned the corner again, turned him around so he's looking north. So there is a video on YouTube which does show early work of mine in video in a lot of aspects about this whole thing. It's called Always Looking North, and you can find that on YouTube. It was in the Dixie Film Festival too, years ago. So anyway, so these are some of the monuments going on. I have a battlefield monument. This one here is in Knoxville, Tennessee, where my wife I met. Although actually she's from Michigan, but she turned into a Southern girl. So anyway, it deals with Fort Sanders, which was a fort outside of Knoxville. A battle was there. So this is actually on a battlefield, although it's a residential neighborhood now next to a hospital named Fort Sanders. But if you see the drapery again on top of this one, another symbol of mourning, but that drapery is a little bit special because there's only a couple of monuments that have it. It's actually a battle flag engraved on it, but you can see it's a symbol of mourning up there on top where the Confederates had tried this battle. All right, again, they turn sideways. I don't understand that.
Do you suppose it's because you got the subtitles on? Because it compressed the picture when you turn the subtitles on.
Maybe so. I don't know how to turn that off either.
Oh.
Anyway, I'm not going to mess with it. So
anybody young enough to figure out computers in here?
I was one time that guy. Anyway, you can still see what's going on here pretty much. This is a sort of style with the monument, the guy on top, and pillars, or maybe like a table. This one is in Claiborne County, Tennessee, and it's a sort of rustic obelisk almost, but sort of different shape. This one is in Nashville. Again, it's at Centennial Park, and I had to try to get through there when they tried
Now,
to do
I think there was just recently a vote, and they voted to leave it there.
Yes, there was. I remember hearing about that. Yes, they did vote to keep it there.
What's on top of it?
It's a soldier sitting.
Okay.
He's sitting up there, and these are all the names of people. A lot of monuments have names. North and South have the names on the monument sometimes of the individuals.
It's the big park where they have the Parthenon.
Yeah, it's where the Parthenon is. And the Good Roads movement happened, started with the bicyclists in 1890, and they were starting to try and get better roads to ride their bicycles. Cars came along, and the people took the same idea, hey, let's get better roads for cars. So you had the Good Roads movement going on, and they did it again. I think it is that compression thing, because it looked fine on the video earlier. Anyway, these are some for Jefferson Davis Highway and Lee Highway. There's also one called Bankhead Highway that I've done a lot of work on. Bankhead Highway is named for Senator Bankhead, who was a proponent of the good roads. In 1916, the Bankhead Bill was passed. He's from Alabama, and he was also a Confederate. In fact, he was the last Confederate in the Congress. He was a senator. He and a federal, I believe he was from Wisconsin or Minnesota. He served in one and lived the rest of his life in another, and represented that state in the legislature. And they were both worked together on a lot of things, apparently, dealing with veterans and things. Even both of them marched in the parade at the reunion in 1920, a few months before he died. So Bankhead Highway got the names up. Before then, you had highway names by different people, and organizations would put together these names and promote the highways. And Davis and Lee, Dixie Highway is another one that's sort of the same monument movement, Good Roads movement thing going on. And so the monument movement sort of ties into the Good Roads with this as well. So if you take away these signs and nobody remembers the name streets, again, you're sort of erasing things. I stayed upright. Monuments north and south. Petersburg, Michigan. This is actually a Union monument in Georgia. Of course, it's also sort of the battlefield thing, because this is an Iowa monument near Ringgold, Georgia, and although it's not in the national park, then it's still out there. I forgot where the other one's from. It's a picture I snagged from somewhere else. I think it might be Indianapolis, but I'm not positive. More. Well, now, a lot of the monuments I've touched on, they're community monuments out there. I haven't really delved into the battlefield ones, such as Gettysburg, Vicksburg, Chickamauga. Those have a little bit of a different story to them. And if you notice on the SPLC list, they aren't on there as public monuments, although other battlefield monuments that are not on National Park Service land is on their list, which is sort of interesting because they sort of tell the troop movements too. There are some mistakes on monuments. Again, it warped them a little bit. In memory of Confederate dead. That guy looks like a federal, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, Missouri. Yeah, he's a federal on top of a Confederate one. This one here is in Winfield here in Louisiana. And look at the guns. They're World War I guns. And then lastly, this guy is the one in Carrollton, Georgia I was telling you about. But what's wrong with him? Can you tell? Even though it's sideways?
Is that a World War I uniform?
1898. Apparently the Italians didn't have a handy uniform for the the Confederates, so they used the uniform that was still in effect in 1910. So there are some, and I've seen other monuments that also have pockets on them. So, you know, some of them do have mistakes on them, which is sometimes humorous to note. Messages on monuments. Again, it switched. This one over here is the one in West Virginia. The Sons and Daughters of New Hampshire erect this tribute. This one's Spartanburg, South Carolina. That one is Gulfport, Mississippi. I can't remember what that one is. And actually, I do a thing on Facebook. If you look up Confederate Monuments Matter, and you join it, it'll ask you a couple questions though. I've already had one person who put, I was born under the rebel flag and I enforce white supremacy, and he's not on there. I'm not letting him on there. But, you know, there's a couple of questions trying to weed out those sort of people, and also those sort of people who would attack us there. But I'm doing a series during April, Messages on Monuments, where I put up just the wording of what it says on the monuments, because that's what they're thinking. The Spartanburg one talks about the Constitution and the rights of the Constitution on it. Again, you have Lest We Forget. Lest We Forget is from a Rudyard Kipling coin, and from 1897. So if you see Lest We Forget on a monument, it is after 1897. Although the reference does go to Deuteronomy. Message on Union monuments, erected by a family for their dead soldiers. Confederate dead, Union dead. Perpetual memory of the defenders of the Union. You'll notice on Union monuments, while we have fighting for state, fighting for Constitution, fighting for rights, fighting for the home front, they have a lot of fighting for preservation of the Union or saving the Union. In fact, out of the 1,300 monuments I've so far looked online and found and looked at pictures of and stuff, 4 have mentioned slaves as a reason. 2 of them are in Massachusetts. 1 is in Maine, who was paid for from a guy from Michigan. 4th one I found recently, and I can't remember where it's from. But the 2 in Massachusetts, one of them is actually from where Frederick Douglass finally settled down. So you sort of see why that would have one there. But 4 out of 1,300 mention it, which implies there's something else going on besides that. The Union monuments aren't even mentioning it that much. And so you see that they also have their ideas on these 2 on here on the sides are both in the South. The one for Minnesota is in Mobile, Alabama, in the National Cemetery. And the other one, I can't remember. Say, I've also been to a couple of dozen Union monuments as well. They sometimes blend together. So some of the symbolism monuments, and this really messed up, but you can still see it. What do you see on these pictures? You can still see it even when they're sideways.
Well, he's at rest instead of shoulder arms or any other part of the manual of arms.
Yeah, but that's not what I'm looking for.
That's what I saw.
Oh, that's fine.
Oh, that picture. I was looking at the one on the left.
This one here. This one here. This one here. What's that?
Stop it.
Yep. The log symbolizes a life cut short. Most likely for the soldiers' life cut short, but you could make an argument as the short life of the Confederate States too. I tend to think more and more it's the soldiers versus, since these are local monuments and to the community memory, so I tend to think it's more of the Confederates. And they're rarely found on Union monuments, this cut-off log. So if you ever see a cut-off log, and the odd one about this one is actually it's on the left leg. Usually it's on the right leg. A couple of them actually have them on the ground sideways. But, it's a symbol of mourning. So if anybody says it's a oppressive statue. It's like, well, it has a log cut off behind it. You can't really argue that it has something a little bit more to it than what you're seeing. And what you're seeing is through rose-colored lenses. Other things, inverted cannons or broken wagon wheels. Again, life's cut short. Damaged things. A column in a cemetery that's broken off, same thing. Cemetery column broken off and draped, same sort of thing. This one here is a little bit unusual because you see the broken off cannon here, you see the cut off logs there, it's sort of sitting on a corner of like a cabin or something. That's actually a Union monument in Ohio. So it's one of the few that actually has the logs there. And in that one with 6 of them stacked together like a corner of a cabin, I'm not sure they really mean life cut short, but they could. But the cannon cut off definitely does. More monument symbolism. These flags here, you can see they're broken. Up here, it's broken. This one is Forest Monument in Rome, Georgia. This one is Hart County, Georgia. The statue was actually gone. I think when I took the picture, it was only 2017. I think they actually removed it to do repairs or cleaning on it, but I haven't really got a full story. But apparently it had been off for a while. But you can see the broken flag motif there, and the furl flag here motif, furling the flags, broken flags of being defeated. Again, symbols of mourning and loss. Oh, this one worked out better. Laurel is a symbology for mourning and loss. Here you have one on the monument itself. Here you might remember hearing about Fame in North Carolina. That's her. She was moved. I did document her before she moved, but they had nicely wrapped her up in plastic. Not the statue, but the wording. So I haven't gotten a picture of her in her new place yet. This one is Arkansas, state capitol there. Again, she has a laurel wreath in her hands. This one's facing away. This one's not one of my pictures. I had to find it online to make my point. And this one here, the loyalty one, those are both Union monuments. So you see the same sort of thing. They might not do so much broken logs and broken cannons, but they do the laurel wreath and stuff up there, symbolizing the losses were there. A few closing thoughts. There is no answer today. That there are many opinions on how to treat monuments. My perspective on monuments, my profession is historic preservation. So I look through it through a lens of saving cultural resources. Although I'm a son of Confederate veterans, I'm also a son of Union veterans too, and Sons of American Revolution and Mayflower. So I have a wealth of history there. But I look through it through the lens of preservation, and I argue to keep them up based on that and how to preserve, continue preservation. I was in fact kicked off a Facebook group because they love the monuments coming down, and I made a point about how you can be preservationist and want the monuments down, and they didn't like that. So, let's see, there's a quote there from Stephanie Meeks. The National Trust for Historic Preservation, they came out against the monuments. Again, can't really be a preservationist and be wanting to pull monuments down. In fact, I'll give you, they say, like, put them in a museum. I did go to one in Texas, and I couldn't find it. I found a scar of where it was. I looked up online, and it said, we put it in a museum, so it can be viewed there. Like, 6:30 on a Saturday night, how do I get in the museum? You've hid it from me looking at it. No. So putting it in a museum doesn't work. Plus, here's the other thing. As I said earlier, it's not just the statue, it's the whole thing. How many museums are that tall? 20, 30 feet tall? Put them up in? They aren't.
They were moving them from the museums too.
Yeah.
They used to say, put them in the cemetery. Well, how's that going?
Yeah. And the other thing is, like, with some of that is, you can move them around, but you're still, like, trying to hide them or something, and like, but you put them in a cemetery, or we don't want them in a cemetery like Arlington. And I've been working on the Arlington stuff as a preservation issue, and so I've been with Defender Arlington. Haven't given money, just give them time and consulting. So yeah, I do support the SCV on that as well for that effort. But it is going through its, being a professional in historic preservation there, having to go through the Section 106 process, which is a long process. So it's going to take a while before that happens. So the suits could come to fruition before it completes the process there. And so there is some hope in that, not necessarily guaranteed, but a hope of that. And since they are using federal funds, that kicks in the whole thing there. Of course, the problem with retained monuments does not save diversity of community. In fact, actually, I went to one place. Was it here or Texas? I've been to so many places, or Mississippi even. I can't remember now. It's been a long 3 weeks on the road. Anyway, I found a monument where the SPLC site said it would be, and it was to a revolutionary guy from 1846. It was pretty neat itself because there weren't too many monuments going up. So I documented that too. I did find across the street, though, there's this Unity Park. Like, it's not very unifying when your monument is moved and displaced. So, but I do find it interesting. I did see one place in Cleburne, Texas. Cleburne. There's a name for Patrick Cleburne. They put up actually a monument to Patrick Cleburne in 2015 there. They also have a Confederate monument there as well. So anyway, in closing, my conclusion is Union and Confederate monuments are a symbol of the community's losses and remembering those community losses. So it's very local. And in terms of preservation, I think they need to be retained as a cultural resource. And a few years ago, I came up with this quote: "Monuments are stone book